Very simply, you do the right things, the money comes. And betting on myself and doing all these other things, that the better my sales skills are, the better I have the ability to make a great living. Sales is absolutely critical. If you're not selling, you're not doing yourself any sort of favors in business. I would say the biggest thing, just in general for sales is just listen. As a realtor, your job is to talk to people and show up on time. But the other thing is knowing your stuff, offering real advice. They're not hiring you to be a yes man in all situations. They're hiring you because you're an expert. No matter what you do, whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're 9 to 5, there is risk in just waking up every day, right? If you're building that sort of business out and you're putting a lot of your own stuff into it, it is a burn the ships situation. It's there is no failure here. We are making this work. It's starting 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 locations, whatever. They started those for similar, pricing to what we paid for our HOTWORX, and then they exited those at $1.5 million, $2 million per location. So they have a well-oiled machine. It prints money. Here's your exit.
Welcome to Step Into Success podcast. Today's guest is Patrick Johnson. Patrick's involved in real estate, fitness, TV, all kind of stuff. Patrick, just going to turn it over to you, let you introduce yourself, who you are, and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely, you guys. Thank you again for taking the time to have me in today. I really appreciate it, and excited to be here. So I guess first things first, when it comes down to introducing myself, like you said, I'm Patrick Johnson. It's a very, very common name. It's led to some tax issues in the past.
Oh,
but
hopefully everything's okay.
Oh yeah, we figured it out. But just to give you guys a little bit of insight as to what I do, like you said, I am involved in a lot of different things, and I think that's maybe an indication of what we might call the gig society or something along those lines, right? And so what I do, my main thing is I'm a real estate broker in Wisconsin, and I run my team. It's called Momentum Realty Partners, and we're powered or brokered by a group called Found It, which is a nationwide brokerage, kind of like the umbrella over the top of our team.
Okay.
On top of that, my wife and I were franchisees for HOTWORX, which is a fitness group. And basically, their claim to fame is coming up with exercise that you do inside infrared saunas. So we can go ahead and break that down a little bit more. Going to be very honest up front, my wife is more of the brains of the operation on that when it comes to the details, but I was kind of the catalyst that made us get into it. And some of that actually came through my involvement in the American Dream TV productions that I'm involved with. And we do that as a real estate company, real estate highlights throughout the area. And that's where we feature, small businesses, lifestyle, and then also, what we do as professionals in the real estate world.
Fantastic.
Very cool. You got a lot going on.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Wearing a lot of hats.
Yes.
That's that's a good introduction to get us started. So you do so much. I guess, what got you into the world of entrepreneurship? What is your background in? How did you transition from your past to what you're doing now?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So when I sit back and think about where I am today and how I got there, it all started with me being a sales guy. So I've been in sales forever, right? And my initial introduction into the sales world was in cell phone accessory sales, all that sort of stuff. This was before smartphones, right? This was flip phones, other stuff like that. And it's back in the day, right? It was you buy your phone and here, you need a $50 charger. Here, you need this, you need that, blah, blah, blah. And you just kind of have your pitch, right? So I got into that world and then transitioned into, oh my gosh, let's see here. It was cell phone sales. Then I got into jewelry sales. So that was retail jewelry. And that was with, say for instance, Sterling, which owned K Jewelers, Jared, Osterman, a bunch of other things along those lines.
Yeah. So it's funny you mentioned starting in sales because we interview entrepreneurs on the show, business owners. I feel like to be an entrepreneur, or especially to be a business owner, that is sales at the highest level.
Oh, absolutely.
But you're the only person at this point that has mentioned having a background in sales.
Yeah.
So for the audience out there listening, how important is getting good at sales if you want to be a business owner or entrepreneur?
It's the only thing. I mean, honestly, right? Like, if you want to grow a real business and scale, which is like, I'm no expert here. Like, I will say that, right? In terms of scaling and growing a massive business. But I've realized as an entrepreneur and betting on myself and doing all these other things that the better my sales skills are, the better I have the ability to make a great living. So it's absolutely the most important thing when you're going to be a business owner. Like, if you have a product you're selling or a service you're selling or something like that, right? The key word is selling it. If you're not telling people about it and why you're the best person to be serving their needs, you probably don't have a lot of clients. Right. So I hope that's a clear enough answer for you, but sales is absolutely critical. If you're not selling, you're not doing yourself any sort of favors in business.
What is your approach for packaging what you're selling to be able to deliver it to the people that you're trying to serve?
Yeah, I'd say the big thing that I look at, and this is mainly going to be from a real estate standpoint, but it's going to be the fact that I actually have quite a bit to offer in terms of the marketing side. So when I'm working with people, some of the things that people run into when they're trying to sell a house is like, oh, I don't want to have 15 appointments to try to get a stager in and a photographer in and a cleaner in, all this other stuff. So I try to really simplify that process by me being the photography professional, right? So I do HDR photography, still cameras. I do 360 walkthroughs, like you'd see like a Matterport and other things along those lines. I have a lot of different drones that I use and things like that. So what I try to do is really make this process simple for people and say, look, if you tell me you're ready to sell your house, I can literally go from like having nothing to work with to capturing all the media that we need in a day, getting your home out there and hyped within 24 to like 48 hours.
Wow.
So there's not a lot of people that can really do that because everybody else has to sit back and wait on the other professionals that they hire to come in and do something. So, sometimes speed really isn't the biggest deal, right? It's just more or less, hey, are you offering a fair rate? Do you have a good history of getting things done that you say you'll get done? Are you reliable, right? Can I pick up, the phone at 10 p.m. when I'm freaking out over something and just have you walk me through it, right? So there's some of that aspect to it as well. But it really comes down to being a solid target marketer and utilizing content and other channels to make sure that we are getting the maximum amount of eyes on that person's property. So does that answer some of that question for you?
So are you specifically the person that's doing that marketing then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So
how did you get into that aspect? So you mentioned you had sales experience. Where did you get your marketing experience from?
Yeah, so that was kind of like just bootstrapping it and figuring stuff out. So, and I guess a piece of this would be too that I have paid like agencies to help me in the past where I'm like, hey, help me with Facebook ads or, help me with this, help me with that. So I have like paid for understanding the process, right? It wasn't like it was just watch like 2 or 3 YouTube videos and now I'm some master marketer, right? There's still things I can improve on, right? And it's kind of that ever-changing thing with algorithms and platforms and other stuff like that. Sure. But the big thing really was, hiring some of these groups saying, hey, this is what I need. I would get maybe a quarter to half of what I really needed and I was still paying into them. So I just really wasn't satisfied. Then I got to the point where I'm like, you know what, there's got to be a better way to do this because if I'm paying X amount of dollars for somebody to help me with it and I'm not really seeing the results, there's got to be a way for me to teach myself or learn it or be in a program or be in a course and figure out how to do some of these things. So that's what I ended up pursuing was, some of it is just YouTube videos or TikTok videos. Okay, this person has a good idea. How can I apply that, right? You take that 30 seconds or 60 seconds of information somebody gives you, and then you go down that rabbit hole of finding out, well, does that work for real estate? Could I apply that to this sort of thing that I'm doing? And that's what I ended up trying for a few different things. And then I got a little bit more intricate and started not relying just on the algorithms of what you'd have on like a platform, because those can be like, they can leave you at a disadvantage, especially in an industry like real estate, because in real estate, the rules are, on Facebook, for instance, if you want to market a property, you have to market that property to anybody and everybody that falls into that algorithm within 15 miles. Okay. So that means like, and this isn't to offend anybody, but that could be in like the homeless guy that has a phone sitting on the street that's not going to buy a house, or, the person that just can't afford a house or other things along those lines, right? Or maybe you tap into a couple millionaires and other stuff too, right? It's an equal opportunity platform in that sense. But in order to really get results, you have to move into the targeting or targeted marketing aspect to really get people that are going to be like, I'm interested in that 2,500 square foot, 3-bed, 2-bath on half an acre, right? And then you look at, well, what does that person do, right? Like, do they have kids? What's their age? What's their income? What's that sort of stuff? If you start getting into that target marketing thing, you build custom lists. And that's what's going to allow you to start reaching people that have a higher intent of actually interacting with your content and with the product that you're selling. In my case, housing. So,
got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super important to know your audience then as well, right? How do you approach navigating that part of getting to know who you're selling to and really narrowing down on those like demographics? I guess?
Yeah. And again, a lot of this stuff, it just starts from the top. And there's some demographic stuff that like realistically, like you can't divvy it all the way up to get a result all the time, right? But in general, the big thing would be, like there's can't remember the guy's name, but he made a really good example of it one day where he was talking about why target marketing was important. He's like, so if I'm just going to target market to a bunch of people with a 500 credit score, that's going to be a pretty big waste of my money, right? So if I start targeting according to like income levels, credit scores and stuff like that, that's going to be something where it's actually bringing me in front of more qualified people. So it's still very general, right? But what we're trying to do is get some of those data points to work to put information in front of people and have them raise their hand saying, I'm interested or I need help with this. So does that answer that a little bit?
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, absolutely. What got you into real estate in the first place? Like, what made you did you just see a market opportunity or did you just have a passion for real estate?
Oh yeah.
From a long time? I mean, what?
I was completely oblivious to it. So honestly, right? I was definitely in that, maybe that millennial mode of just being like, wow, I just have a crap load of student debt. Life sucks. Man, I wonder how many more like purchases I can put on this credit card, like before I have to actually figure out how to pay it and then fix my car that just broke too, right? So I was very much in that mode, and and it's weird. It's a weird dynamic because like before there was one more stop after I got out of the jewelry industry, which was software sales. But I did really well in the jewelry industry. Like I was top salesperson in the nation for the company for certain things, certain stores and other stuff like that. So I've never had a problem selling, right? But there was just some of that stuff where I just like couldn't get out of my own way in a lot of cases. So anyway, I was in, again, like I was saying, like that millennial like death roll or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And I was working for a software company. And it was interesting because this was like a mom and pop software company, and everything else I'd ever worked at was more of a corporate thing where it's like you showed up, you did your job, you got your check, right?
Yeah.
Well, I was with this place for like a year, and I didn't really realize how small of a business it was. But they were like, hey, we're having some trouble. So like everybody's taking a pay cut and like you guys don't get paid this week. And I was just like, well, that shit's not going to work.
Right.
Wow.
So within a short amount of time of dealing with some of that stuff, I talked to my buddy, Aaron, best man in my wedding and everything like that. We've been friends for a long, long time. And me and him actually met in Madison, Wisconsin when we both lived there, and we were both in the jewelry industry.
Got it.
So like random small world stuff, right? Yeah. And so he's like, well, hey man, he's like, if software sucks, why don't you just try real estate? And I was just like, I got nothing to lose. I'm like, well, let's give it a try. So, I just kind of went through the process where he's like, okay, first you got to buy your course, and then you got to get through your course. And then you got to go take your test. So then I go and take the test. And he's like, once you pass the test, you get your license. So went through, did all that stuff. And then he was the one that definitely like, we still work together to this day. But he's the one that kind of like, rolled out the carpet and said like, hey, this is your path to real estate. Let's go walk down it. I'll show you the tips, the tricks, and like, let's get some deals going sort of thing. So that's how I found real estate. I never really, I think where a lot of us had come from, I'm 37. Oh, sorry, I just hit the microphone. But I'm 37. And I think a lot of people in our age group, maybe a little bit higher, a little bit lower in terms of age, a a lot of people probably experience that, like, I'm never going to own a house. Like I have so much student debt. Like, how am I ever going to afford a house? You know, like I'm not going to get married. I'm not going to have kids. Like there is a late bloomer of a generation type thing going on here. And until my buddy turned me on to real estate, I never thought about it at all.
Cool.
So this gentleman, he was already in the industry then to help you through.
Yeah, that's correct. So that was Aaron. He was a broker. I think he had his broker's license, or he was building a team or something at that time when he kind of introduced me to that whole world.
Okay, and then he acted as like a mentor to you throughout your journey getting into real estate.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So me and him, like, we still work together to this day, and we're basically like on the same team. You know, I would consider ourselves to be at the same level. It's more of like a partnership now than it is like a mentee mentor.
Gotcha.
But either way, it's like, this is a business too. No matter what you do, like whenever you think you've seen it all, you haven't. So it's like always good to have, I don't know, just somebody to bounce ideas off of or a shoulder to cry on. You know?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And so did you find that there's like a slight barrier to entry then? You mentioned some tests. Was there like a financial barrier at all?
Yeah, so, you know, there's a level of that to it. So, you know, in order to first like get your license, you do have to take a course. And that's like $300 and some at this point. It's like an online course. I can't remember the exact amount of hours. It's been a while since I've done it. But you go through that course, you pay that couple, like $300, whatever, maybe almost $400.
Okay.
And then once you complete that course, that gives you the opportunity to go and take your state test, right? So to take that test, I think that's probably like $90, give or take, something like that at this point. And you do that at like a Pearson VUE, sort of like just standardized testing center.
Okay.
Right. So I know when I did my initial test, I took it in Brookfield over here, just right off of, something Bishop's Woods or something, one of those office buildings over there. And then when I did my broker exam, I actually did that at WCTC right in Pewaukee. So, so it's just a standardized testing thing. So that end of the business is pretty low barrier to entry. But what those initial trainings and courses do, they really just have you kind of go through the legalese of things. And it's like, it's not very applicable to real world real estate, if that makes any sense. But
I can imagine.
Yeah, it's you know, it's textbook as opposed to real life.
World.
Okay. So after that happens, like, you know, you get your license through the state, and then you do what we call hanging your license with a brokerage. So you choose what broker you're going to work with, and then you operate under that broker's team or company or however they have it structured.
Okay.
So the thing that ends up, you know, costing you money to get into real estate is like your MLS dues. So that's usually anywhere from like maybe on the low end $900 to maybe $1,200 a year, on top of like monthly fees for access to the MLS. And then also, once you're operating at a brokerage, that brokerage is usually going to take a piece of the pie, right, whenever you close a deal. So this is kind of a misconception that a lot of people have in real estate, or I should say outside of real estate. Somebody hires you to sell their house, and, you know, they see the commission at the end once they get their closing statement. They're like, I just paid you $12,000. It's like, no, if you just paid the brokerage $12,000, I'm going to see probably about $4,500 worth of that, right?
Okay.
So there's a lot of costs involved in that process for these entities to exist. All right. So as a broker, you're going to have to be paying for like legal. You're going to have a lot of other tools, you know, CRMs, and, you know, maybe you're paying for an office, maybe you're paying for other stuff. So there's a lot of other hard costs that are involved where people just see the commission checks. They don't understand that it's like, no, it's a real business. It's not like you just take that money and blow it, you know?
Gotcha.
So that's kind of one of those things to keep in mind where, and, you know, depending on your level of experience and what you can bring to the table, you know, there's a lot of people that can earn quite a bit more, right? Maybe they do take home that full $12,000 check if they're the broker and they're the one servicing that client. But there's a lot of costs involved with this world that sometimes if you can't hack it, it becomes kind of limiting where you're just like, I don't know if I want to do it anymore. So that's something to think about in the overall cost. And barrier to entry is low, barrier to longevity is high, I guess is what I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
What separates the mediocre real estate agents from the super successful, high achieving ones like yourself?
Yeah, I would say there's a couple different things to really look at. The main thing is, and this kind of sounds like cliche, right? But it's just doing the basic things, right? As a realtor, like your job is to like talk to people and show up on time. Like if you do that on a regular basis, you can probably be a pretty good realtor because you're going to learn a lot of other stuff along the way.
Yeah.
But there's so many people that just can't get out of their own way. Like a couple examples of this is when I've been in the process of trying to recruit other agents to join my team. Put an ad out there. Somebody says, hey, yeah, I'm interested. Okay, when's a good time to talk? Well, I can't talk right now. Oh, okay. So what's a good time to talk? Well, I really don't know because I've got showings at this time and this time. Okay, so you have a showing at 4 and you have a showing at 6. Could we talk at 5? Oh, I just don't know. I don't really, there's that sort of stuff where it's just like these people that can't get out of their own way are the people that tend to fail at this sort of stuff. I'm sorry, if you want to repeat the question too and get me back on track here.
No. It's funny you say that too, because I feel like the more that we have the ability to communicate in this day and age, the worse people's communication actually is, which is the irony in all of it. No, so you pretty much answered so I was asking, what separates mediocre or the failing real estate agents from the ones that are successful?
Sure.
The other thing I want to know is, how did you go from where you were working at another brokerage, working for other people, to building your own brokerage, and now people are working for you? Can you tell us about that story?
Yeah, absolutely. And one other thing, just to get back to that other question too a little bit, I'm sorry I kind of left us off on a tangent there. But the other thing is knowing your stuff is the other big end of it. So once you can handle those basics, if you can walk through a house and you can point out things and you can tell people, hey, this is why it's a good idea for you. This is why it's not a good idea for you. Offering real advice. And there's some people I interact with on a regular basis where it's like they will calculate their commission before they go and do a showing, right? That is like a recipe for disaster in this world where it's like you have to always just put your client first, right? And worry about the money later, right? It's very simply, you do the right things, the money comes.
Got it.
Right? So sorry about getting back from the other end of it here.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. No, that's good to know.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, could you refresh me on the other question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I said, I'm a tangent monster.
Hey, we love it. We love it.
I apologize.
No, we love it. That's what we're here for, man. We want to just have a good conversation. The next question was, how did you go from working for other people and being a real estate agent at another brokerage to now having your own and having people work for you? Can you tell us and the audience a little bit about that story?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing just to clarify, so me and Aaron, we still work together for the same brokerage. So I'm a bit of an anomaly in the industry there where very often people always tend to think it's the brokerage and not themselves. That's the problem. So a lot of people bounce from brokerage to brokerage to brokerage. So they're maybe like, oh, I started at Shore West, but their split sucks. So now I went to Keller Williams and oh, well, they don't have the right training. So now I'm going to go to First Weber. And, it's kind of this never ending, and there's some validity there for those things. But a lot of times it's just people not looking at themselves and saying, I could do better. Right. So, what I did in terms of structuring things is I'm still with the same brokerage, but I started my own team. Okay. So I do have a broker's license. I do run my own team, and I've been slowly building that up over the years.
Okay.
Just looking for and finding quality people. There's a lot of people that try to scale their teams very fast, and they'll just grab anybody and everybody that shows up. And that usually just ends up not working out very good. And I'm sure as you guys have talked with other, business owners, one of the high cost things that you can do in any business is getting employees, right? And so something like this, I'd kind of taken like the tortoise pace on it to a certain extent. But I've found that, the people that I generally have working with me, they care, they understand, like, hey, clients first, right? That sort of stuff. So there's a good culture fit there with a lot of these people where they're like, hey, let's take the things seriously that we need to take seriously, do a great job for our people that are working with us, but let's also have fun. And, not everything needs to be like as serious as a heart attack sort of idea, right? So, so there's a little bit of that. And then, I guess my process from going from like just an agent that started out into becoming a team leader, getting my broker's license and that sort of stuff was this is one of Aaron's sayings. He's like, when you first start out, he's like, you got to be a kamikaze realtor. He's like, if somebody says they want a house in La Crosse, like you just go show them that house in La Crosse, right? So I did a lot of that. Like I worked the entire state when I started in this business, and I was in a very different place in my life at that point. Okay. So now I'm married and I have 2 little kids. All right. If I tried to do that right now, I would be like divorced or worse. Right. So the thing is, like, if you're not tied down to as much stuff, being that person that like somebody can call you and be like, yeah, I'll show you that house in Green Bay tomorrow at 8 a.m. Let's go. Right. Being accessible is huge. And I made myself massively accessible to a lot of people all over the state. And I help, and even to this day, like I'll have random listings or closings like 2 or 3 hours away from here just because people know I'm the guy, right? And they'll call me and say, hey, you helped my sister with this. Can you help me with this? Right? So there's that sort of fun stuff that happens. But I'm also to the point in my career too, where it's like having the family and other stuff like that. I'm trying to condense the vast majority of people I serve to the area, the greater area that I live within. Right. And then building out that really good team that, I know they're going to take care of somebody as well as I would or better in whatever area this client happens to be in. So does that help answer that question?
Got it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So how do you manage your time and work-life balance? Like time within work, but also work with the rest of your life and your family?
Yeah, I guess, it's a very hard question to answer. And I think, because I've always kind of been like that hard charging idea of like, there is no work-life balance.
Okay.
Right? And that got me to where I was, which was seeing some success and, being busy in this world and everything. But it also is extremely straining, right? So it's like, and not even from just a family standpoint, but like there is a certain level of burnout that you can reach, even if you're the best realtor in the world, if you have no time for yourself, your friends, your family, or doing like real people stuff, it takes a toll on you. Yeah. So I guess that's been like an evolution in itself for me, where it's like the kids really helped with that. Like me being like, oh yeah, like Tallulah wants to go like see a movie today or something, right? So I'm like, okay, I gotta go do that now. And it's like the phone's off for 2 hours or whatever, right? So it's not something that I guess in my case that I walked into having any like true understanding of, just to be very honest.
Yeah, that's great.
Because there wasn't any work-life balance. It was just like go, go, go all the time. And the weird dynamic there is like, that's what helped make me successful and make me accessible to so many people, to create more closings, to create more momentum, to create all that stuff in terms of happening, right? And getting things done. But yeah, once I had the kids and stuff like that, it was like, whoa, I can't do that. Like a perfect example of this is when my son it was either like right before he was born or like he was in the process of being born. I had a call from some clients. They're like, hey, could you show us this house tomorrow? And I was like, yeah, I'm sure we can figure it out, right? Wow. So, and it's like, the thing is, it was the market too. There's certain market demands that if you want to be good at this, you can't ignore what you're up against, right? All these, at that time frame, my son's 2 now, so this would be like right in the peak of the craziness of the market. Okay. That house could have been sold 2 hours from then, right? Yeah. So, you want to carry on your reputation of extremely high customer service and excellence. But there is that dynamic where you have to like be able to shut off sometimes. And that is something I can 100% tell you I've like struggled with, stumbled through. And like, I'm still not the best at it, but I have been trying like certain techniques and stuff like that to just be like, okay, let's time block or time chunk, right? And then that allows me to say like, nope, this is family time or whatever else. An interesting factor that you run into when you're somebody like me, where you were like 100% just like, you know, gung-ho on everything, being like, okay, yeah, let's go show this, let's go show that. Like, I can show you this in Fond du Lac after I get done showing this other house in Green Bay, but it's going to be a 1.5 hour difference, so let's plan on this time, right?
Yeah.
So being in that mindset and then shifting into this, I have to watch my kids, I have to spend time with my kids. There would be either like resentment towards my family being like, guys, like if you want me to put food on the table, I got to be out. You can't be pissed off at me for not being here.
Right.
But then there was also the flip side of it too, where it's just like, okay, I'm trying to take my 1 hour here with my kids. I'd get pissed off when people would call me. So it was like, it's, I think I'm past a lot of that now and just finally getting to the point of like understanding like, hey, it's okay for my clients to want my time and it's okay for my family to want my time. I'm just trying to shimmy it around and make it work, right? So I'm getting better and better at it, but it is hard when you are in that world and you just can't answer to everybody all the time. And it becomes a little bit of a strain sometimes.
Yeah, well, I imagine because you're not only having to deal with your schedule, but then the schedule of everybody else who's looking to, you know, see a house or whatever.
That's a great, I was just going to mention to you though, that's a great point because a lot of people that get into this industry, they're in love with the idea of I make my own schedule. It's super sexy. I get to walk around cool houses all the time. It's like, you don't make your own schedule at all outside of what you schedule for yourself. You have to make yourself available to your clients, right? So if your clients are all working 9 to 5 and they want to see houses, well, yeah, then you're not hanging out with your family for dinner or going to a show or, you know, going out to eat, that sort of stuff.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, so it's like to have that true dedication to get to that point of being excellent in this industry. And there's a million different pathways to do it. This is not the only way, right? I'm sure that I just have my own experience and some of it's wrong, some of it's right, whatever. Anybody can take that for what it is. But again, the accessibility end of it really helped me. And I think getting better at that time balancing stuff, like if I could have done it earlier, I should have, right? But we're all human and we're just learning. So
yeah, learning as you go. So do you think, just in your opinion, if someone were, say, looking to have a career shift and maybe in their mid-30s, early 40s even, they've already established their family, but they want to get into real estate, do you think that that's a viable option for them, or do you think that they would be missing that key accessibility component that would make them successful?
I think it really depends on the person.
Okay.
And there's a couple other factors there. You know, like with me and my wife right now, like our kids are little, like they're not even in school yet.
Okay.
So it's very hard for us to split that time because my wife works full time as well. Plus we started the other franchise and everything. So if somebody is in that position, I would say like you're probably shooting yourself in the foot sort of thing, right?
Okay.
Like just stick to something that has some structure to it. It doesn't mean that you can't pursue your education stuff, you know, like get your real estate course done, get your license, you know, and maintain in that sense. But it's probably something that's going to be very hard to break into if you're in a similar position. So I've been doing real estate for like 10 years at this point.
Okay.
So yes, this has been like a big shakeup for me the last few years ever since having kids and everything, but I wouldn't see myself doing anything else. It's just, it's the industry I'm in and, you know, have grown to love sort of thing.
Yeah.
Now, if somebody, say for instance, maybe their kids are older and they're, you know, in middle school or high school or something like that, they want to spend time with them anyway, right? The kids, the kids I'm saying don't want to spend time with their parents. So, you know, from that standpoint, that could be a good thing. And if you look at maybe somebody that's in their like mid 40s, 50s, they're probably pretty well networked too, right? And your network plays a key role in real estate at any given time because the only people that are going to probably trust you out of the gate to do anything are your friends and your family that are willing to support you as a, you know, independent small business owner, you know, doing your own thing as a real estate agent. So that can be advantageous. You know, there's a lot of people that have been successful that, you know, grab that license at 50 years old and they just become, you know, oh yeah, that's Jim. Jim's, you know, he's got his real estate license now. Oh yeah, that's cool. Me and him used to work together here, and then his other friend used to work with him here. And then these guys see him at the bar every Friday night for a Friday fish fry, like,
Yeah.
and then you just have yourself a little clientele already. So there can be ways to do this at different times throughout your life. What I tend to see is a lot of people that were in different industries beforehand, like maybe they were military, maybe they were police, something like that, maybe even medical field, right? Maybe they were a nurse and they ran a emergency room for 25 years and they're just done with it, right? And they want to do something else. And those sort of people too, that maybe they've been in those places before where it's not just the easiest job, they've dealt with the public, right? That sort of stuff. Those sort of people can transition well into those roles too. And again, it just depends on the individual though. Like anybody who has the right attitude and is there willing to take an interest in their clients' needs, be a professional, become excellent, know what they need to know, and then be able to execute on those things regularly. Anybody can do that if they're the right fit and they have that sort of attitude that, they can wrap their heads around that. The big thing that gets lost on people is, everybody thinks realtors and, used car salesmen, all that stuff are all, like just terrible people. For some reason, it's like I don't remember the saying. It's like everybody likes to buy stuff and nobody likes to get sold or whatever,
Yeah.
right? Something like that. But the thing is, like, I struggled with this for years too, because it was like, like trying to help people, but it's like, I just feel like I'm not making an impact. And then you sit back and think about it, it's like, well, you're actually impacting people with what usually ends up being the largest purchase of their life, right? That's the largest asset that most people will own. And you're helping them make the biggest decisions for, buying it, holding it, selling it, that sort of stuff. And then the other like magical part that you see about this too is like, oh wow, like those people that I sold this house to when they were engaged, like 3 years later, I see a post on Facebook, oh, they're having a kid or they have a kid. It's like you see that you are actually helping people like through these big steps in their life, and that you were kind of like that rock that they were leaning on when they're scared as all hell, trying to like be like, is this the right move? Is this not the right move? It's like, do you think the resale is going to be okay? Like, and just helping people get through that process. So that's just like a little pat on my own back sort of thing. But you got to remind yourself like why you do it, and that what you're doing does have an impact, and that, again, you're not just like some sleazeball, right? Because the public seems to like carry that through in a lot of sales roles from what I've seen. So,
when it comes to getting into real estate, what were some of the biggest challenges for anybody out there that's listening, that's thinking about getting into real estate? Maybe they aren't that 40-year-old person that's already got a huge network. Maybe they're fresh out of college, or maybe they don't even want to go to college and they want to do real estate instead. What advice would you have for them? What are some of the challenges you faced and ways that you think that you can pass down to, the upcoming generation of how they can avoid those challenges? What do you have to say to that?
I would say, so a couple things to consider with that would be, there's two approaches. You can kind of do what I did, which was maybe like a harder path, but I wasn't tied down to anything. So I just like went out there and did everything I possibly could. Didn't matter what the deal was. I was figuring out a way to make it work, right? The other end of this would be like niche down into something that you're like truly interested in. So like, like let's say for instance, you live in downtown Milwaukee. There's a lot of condos in downtown Milwaukee, and condos they're an interesting piece of real estate because, there's a lot of turnover opportunities with those. It's kind of that stop for a lot of people where it's like, okay, like I'm going to be in my apartment. Okay, I want to own something, but I don't really feel like cutting the grass and all that stuff. So they might buy a condo and live in that for like 2 to 5 years. Well, if you become the condo guy, right, you have a lot of opportunity there where it's like, okay, become an expert in that scene, right? Get people into them. Okay, 2 to 5 years later, you got a bunch of listings, you're selling those. If you've kept up with everything during that same time, you probably have a backlog of buyers that are looking for those same condos. Then you're getting both ends of that transaction, and you're continuing to cement yourself as that expert in that area, in that niche or niche, whatever you want to say, right? So that's one way that I would say like people just getting into this could really do themselves a favor, is find something that, is interesting to you, like learn everything you possibly can about it, be the expert in that market about it, like know like, oh, I know that building. oh yeah, I actually have the record high sale in that building now. Like this, that, blah, 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 whatever else, right? Oh, they're replacing the pool in that building right now. It's going to be wonderful once it's done. Like that sort of stuff. If you really, really like just know your stuff, there's no reason for people to say like, oh, I don't want to work with you on that. So, you might not have the strongest history. You might not have the strongest network at that point. But if you come through with the most knowledge and the most persistence and stuff like that, then you can do yourself some favors. So,
Great. Yeah, thanks a lot.
yeah.
And would you say with the selling aspect of it, that knowledge plays a big role in it? You'd mentioned, kind of delivering on expectation consistently.
Yeah.
Are there any other sales tips that you have to offer people, whether it's real estate or just general sales that you've found have helped you in your career?
Yeah. I would say the biggest thing that just in general for sales is like, just listen to what people are actually like wanting, right? So like an example of this would be in real estate, somebody might say, oh yeah, I want a 3-bedroom, a 2-bath. I want at least, 2 acres or whatever, right? And then say, okay, I got all that. I'm setting up your search, right? We set it up. We've got that. Now you're going to start seeing options coming your way. Then when you take them out to that property, they're like, oh my God, this yard's huge. Like, I don't have time to cut this grass. Like, well, I thought a 2-story would work, but like I just had my hip replaced. I'm not going to be able to go up all those stairs, right? So it's just, people will tell you one thing. You have to be smart enough to like read between the lines and sometimes really offer that expert advice where it's like, like, hey, Judy, that's awesome. I found this house for you. It matches all your criteria, but it sounds like, you just had your hip replaced, so the stairs aren't going to work so well. And that yard is huge. Are you sure you really want 2 acres? Like, should we reconsider some of this stuff?
Okay.
And being bold enough to say that. Because what gets lost on a lot of salespeople is like, it's, just like we were talking about before, everybody loves to buy, nobody likes to be sold. But I think that's kind of BS. Like, people want guidance. They want expert, guidance through whatever problem it is that they're having or whatever they're trying to solve. And if you can insert yourself into those conversations in a not like bull in a china shop sort of way, but just respect the fact that this is what you told me. I've eaten that up and I understand it, but now I'm seeing these are the problems you're running into, so I think this would be a better pathway for you. Does that make sense for kind of what I'm trying to explain to you there?
Yeah, definitely. Kind of establishing yourself as the expert without being super pushy, so that someone that you're working with maybe feels a little insignificant or something like that.
It's the intent is never to make somebody feel wrong about what they thought they wanted. Right? Because again, everybody's just going through their own evolution of like their wants and needs and all that sort of stuff. So the not being pushy part, I would say that's like probably one of the biggest things in my like years of sales of any type, where I was never shoving anything down somebody's throat, being like, you need this, you got to do this right now. It was always just like, let's listen, like, let's have some empathy, let's figure out what's going on, let's talk through it, and let's make it an enjoyable experience. And I think that's part of why I've been able to be successful and have so many people come back to me, because I was never that sleazy dude just saying like, commission breath like the whole time, right?
Yeah.
So, and maybe might be able to offer some insight on this too. This might be more of a Midwest thing, right? Like the Midwest end of things, like people don't always like being very direct in Wisconsin, like maybe compared to somewhere down south or other places. Like there's things that, like you hear it on maybe some of the TV shows that are real estate related. Somebody just straight out says like, nope, this and this. And you're just like, oh, I wouldn't have said it like that. Right. You know what I mean? So I don't know if you have any insight on that either, or if you think maybe culturally there might be some differences, from the South to, Midwest and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, the South and the Midwest actually have a lot in common.
Yeah.
They really are very similar. And I think people in the South are also very polite. They're not going to be super direct, not going to be super rude. So I think it's actually quite similar.
Sure.
I can't really speak from a real estate side, but having been in sales myself, I do agree with you that while people don't like to be sold to and have it shoved down their throat, people do like that confirmation, that expert opinion that, man, I thought I wanted that house with the stairs, but now that you brought it to my attention that my mom is going to be living with us and she's 85 years old and those stairs may present a problem for her. Like, you're right. That's a good point. People like that. That's what they kind of pay you for, really, in a way, right?
Well, truly, right? And it's that, again, it comes down to you listen to them, right? It shows, there's always this, I feel like in sales, again, everything gets such a bad rap because it's like, oh, I have this sweet clothes that, I can sell ice to an Eskimo bullshit, like that sort of stuff. But it's like, in the end, by doing your job, and like you said, what people pay you for, what people hire you for, they're not hiring you to be a yes man in all situations. They're hiring you because you're an expert. So if you show them, this is what I think, right? These are the other clients I've dealt with in a similar situation. And 9 out of 10 of them decided to take this route because this discussion that we had, right? Showing you care, but like truly caring and not just lip service, right? So I think that sort of stuff makes a big difference.
Yeah. Absolutely. I would agree. So transitioning a little bit from real estate, because you got so much going on. Tell us how you, and I know you said your wife is kind of the brainchild of it in a way. Tell us how you got into the fitness world. Yeah. And you own a HOTWORX franchise, correct?
Yes. Yep, that's correct.
So how did that happen?
So it actually, it all came about through a real estate related activity.
Okay.
So we were filming a American Dream TV segment, and then this segment actually ended up getting onto Travel Channel, which is kind of cool. But it was just highlighting some, health and wellness stuff in downtown Milwaukee. So it was suggested that we go and check out this place called HOTWORX. And I'm just like, oh, what's HOTWORX? And, oh yeah, you do these workouts in a sauna and stuff. Well, it sounds cool, but I'm like, I have no clue, right? So we go there and I check it out, and a little backstory, my wife has been a yoga instructor for like 10 years, right? So she was always into yoga, got all these certifications, taught at different local yoga places, like Hot Yoga Milwaukee, and just a handful of these different studios, right? And so when I went there and I filmed this like little segment, I was like, wow, I was like, Stacy would love this, and the big thing that was on my mind is when I was filming this, we had, 2 little kids. She hasn't taught a class in like 3 years or 4 years. She hasn't gone out and like worked out or done a yoga class in probably the same amount of time, just because, when you get into that little kid mode, you're just, everything is that, right? It's, you're working or you're there doing the kid stuff. So I was like, wow, like this is such a cool concept. And one of the things that really sold me on it was, okay, it's 15 minutes for a HIIT workout inside of a sauna. You can burn 300 or 400 calories in 15 minutes. And then if your body's heating up like your core temperature, you can still burn calories after walking out of that sauna for like an hour after you're out of it. Okay. So I was like, okay, time, right? I was like, wow, this is like a time machine for workouts. So I was super amped about it and everything. I come home and I tell Stacy, this is so cool. Like, you're going to love this. And it was just like the biggest like yawn I've ever seen in my life. She's like, whatever. She's like, we're busy, and blah, 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 all this other stuff. So I took it upon myself to reach out to their franchising group. I was like, hey, I think this is really cool. I'm like, what does a franchise cost? Like, can you give me some info on that sort of stuff? So they give me some of the basic info. They come back with it. So I just kind of like kept sliding it in front of her and be like, hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? So it's only this much to get involved, all this other stuff. So then she finally was like, okay, I'll take the call or whatever. And then after we started going through that process, she went to the downtown location, the downtown HOTWORX on Water Street. And those guys are wonderful down there, just awesome people. And she, bought like a handful of workouts, like drop-in type workouts. And she finally got herself there. And I think she said she was in the cycle class and she just started crying on the bike because she was like, this is so awesome. She's like, I need this so bad. So that's truly like how it started, was just a little bit of like couple bickering, just being like, hey, this is really cool. No, it's probably not. No, really it is. And then like finally going and trying it. So it's kind of hilarious.
Yeah.
So how does that differ then starting a franchise compared to what you're doing in real estate, I mean, just the dynamics of like the business structure and how that all works.
Yeah. So, it's really interesting, and this doesn't hold true for every like real estate business, because there are real estate franchises out there too where you can buy into them and they'll give you like their SOPs and their systems and all that other stuff. That's not really what I've done in real estate. It's been more like my own thing, operating on the way that I want to do things and creating my own procedures and all that sort of stuff. On the flip side of that, when we bought into HOTWORX, part of the reason that we did buy into it is that they have such a solid structure for how you're going to build that business.
Okay.
So a couple examples of that would be like, you just go through this 6-day onboarding process. Like before you even sign off on your agreement, they're like, you're basically training with them for 6 days, seeing like, is this for you?
Okay.
Right. And that helps, their washout rate and everything as well. Or it's like, okay, like the people that are actually giving us money and investing in this, they're serious about it. They understand the benefits. They understand like why you want to do it, the structure and all that sort of stuff. And then on top of that, they have a really good system where, they have a team that helps you find like your commercial real estate space, right? So even though I'm a broker, I couldn't say like, hey, yeah, guys, like I got it covered, don't worry about it. They actually had their team work on it on our behalf to help us find a place. So that was kind of nice in a sense too, where, not saying that this doesn't take time or anything, like it takes plenty of time and effort. I'd say we are about 1 year and 1 month into the process and almost open. We should be opening hopefully within the next like 2 or 3 weeks. But they had this pathway that they can help you follow, right? So, signing on, finding the real estate, once that's, been secured, then, they kind of teach you, okay, this is how our pre-sale is going to work. This is how you're going to start your Facebook page. This is how we're going to get leads for you. This is how, you convert people during your pre-sale phase. This is when we're going to start construction. We're going to get a quote from, XYZ contractors. You're going to make your decision. They're going to start the build out, right? So there was structure. It's not always perfect by any means, but there was structure to every step of the process. And that's really the value that you're getting when you buy into a franchise of any type. And I can't speak to all franchises by any means. There's so many of them out there, but that really is the value proposition, I would say, having gone through it, is the fact that, no, we have 600 of these that are up and running. Follow the process and you'll be successful. It's like, we're the players, the franchise is the head coach. You just run the play, right? That's kind of the best analogy that I could put for that sort of situation.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
Do you mind, and if you don't feel comfortable, that's fine, but do you mind speaking to kind of the numbers a little bit as far as like what kind of investment is it to get started in a franchise, and what kind of return you can expect with that guidance?
Oh yeah, for sure. So when we look at like the general layout of at least like what was displayed to us, to buy a single license with HOTWORX, it was like $20,000, right around there. And then what we have to do is, in order to fund the actual build out of the gym location and everything, this is what varies greatly depending on your state. So the cost of like materials, the cost of your contractors, that sort of stuff, there's big differences. So I've heard for studio build outs costing as high as like $900K in California. Ours was probably about, I think it was 500-ish, right around there. In Midwest is probably going to be kind of like right in the middle in a lot of cases, maybe a little less expensive than some of the other places. But then I think maybe the lowest build out for smaller studios is maybe like 350 or 400, something like that. And again, I don't know all of it like the back of my hand, but that's just kind of like general idea. And what we did is we ended up going through I always forget the acronym of it, but it was a small business like loan. Right? If you ever did a loan on a house, this is like a colonoscopy times 10. Totally crazy situation where they want to leverage every single asset that you own. So if you're ever going to go down that path through like small business association or whatever it's called, again, sorry, I'm forgetting. But if you're going to go down that, just know that it's intense. Like it's an intense process. They're going to try to leverage every single thing that you have, tie it to the loan, all that sort of stuff. So it's really one of those things where if you're building that sort of business out and you're putting a lot of like your own stuff into it, like it is a burn the ships situation. It's like there is no failure here. Like we are making this work.
Yeah.
So you have to be aware of that, like jumping into it. But the upside of this, and part of the reason that we felt comfortable investing in it, was from a simple standpoint of just like operating the business, having 200 plus some members. You should be able to turn a profit of at least like 100,000 a year off of that gym. If you get into like that 500 member or above range, you should be making like a pretty decent amount of money off of that. Yeah. And the big thing is that you look at it from a future standpoint. There's, I'm sure everybody's kind of familiar with like Orange Theory. It was another gym type situation. Their big thing was kind of like private training or some private training type of stuff, right? Like individual training. Yeah. And what HOTWORX is doing is they're following a very similar trajectory to what Orange Theory did. So what happened is there's a lot of individuals that invested in Orange Theory. It's starting 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 locations, whatever. They started those for similar, pricing to what we paid for our HOTWORX. And then they exited those at like 1.5 million, 2 million per location when hedge funds became interested in them, right? So they have a well-oiled machine, it prints money, here's your exit, right? So what we're looking at with HOTWORX is they just turned 7 years old. They have 600 active locations right now, and there's at least 1,000 licenses sold. Okay. So the trajectory is following very similar path to what Orange Theory did. So we look at this as, do we want to be involved in running it forever and ever and ever? It depends on how much we love it, right? Like maybe this is the thing that we love more than anything, and we're like, yeah, we'll never sell it. On the other hand, right, if, say for instance, we open 3 to 5, 10 locations and we can bundle that together for a nice exit, then that's kind of like that's a retirement plan for us too. So,
exactly.
Yeah. So
there's early.
Yeah, exactly. So there's some nice opportunity with that. And does that cover all the questions?
Yeah, no, that's some great insight. Yeah. I'm kind of just trying to gauge, like, for our audience too, when considering trying to start a business, is franchise an option for someone who's getting their feet wet in business because you have that guidance, but also kind of balancing out with the investment that's required to buy in.
Oh, for sure. And that's the thing is it's definitely something where you have to have some sort of like nest egg. You know what I mean? You're buying that ease of entry into owning a business. So like that costs something, right? So if we didn't have something to lean on, the chances of us being able to open that wouldn't have been as great. There's plenty of people out there that figure out a way to make it work though too. And maybe they fundraise with like friends, family, do something to figure that out, to raise that money to make it happen. But yeah, it definitely takes a little bit of a investment where, you're insulating yourself from some of the risk by having that mapped out for you. But it doesn't mean that you can go in with no money. So,
right.
Yeah.
And so you had mentioned that there is sort of a lead generation plan that they have in place for you. Are you still then responsible for nurturing those leads, getting clients and memberships and everything? So it's not like they hold your hand through everything, but they kind of give you a blueprint for you to follow.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, this comes down to like systems, right? So they have like their demographic stuff that they know just works, right? And they've tested this all over the United States, and they find, hey, this is what works for us, so we're going to advertise it this style. So they do that, but then it really does come down to each individual studio, right? Yeah. So, for instance, Stacy and I, if somebody comes in as a lead, like, hey, one of us has to reach out, give that person a call and say like, hey, thanks for taking an interest in HOTWORX Pewaukee. What do you all know about HOTWORX so far? Have you ever worked out at one? And, that sort of stuff, right? Where you go through that sales process with each individual that takes an interest in your studio. So, good ways to get that lead flow in that, the corporate side has, where it's like, hey, set this up, do this. You're going to spend this much a month on your advertising. It's going to probably give you X amount of opportunities. We want to see you close, at least 35% of those opportunities type of thing. So that's kind of at least the way that they've, given us a pathway for that.
Okay, so they actually give you some KPIs and metrics to go for.
Yep. And that's one of the reasons why we were very, very impressed. It's a younger company in general, right? Like 7 years old.
Yeah, it is young.
So they have some really good stuff that they put together. And again, none of this is to say that it's like, hey, this is just a dream, just give them a check and you're like just cashing your own checks a few months later or anything. Like, it is a lot of hard work. I can't remember who said it. Somebody was like, franchises are like entrepreneur light. I've never heard a more bullshit comment in my life. When you're running a franchise, like you are legitimately running a business. You just have some mentorship over the top of you. And it depends on how well they really structured those systems. So HOTWORX has done a wonderful job with the systems that they have in place to make it as easy as possible to be successful. But there's still a lot of grinding it out and hard work that you have to do to make that even remotely successful. It falls on the shoulders of like the owners, the people that you hire, the people that you entrust with growing that business. Yep.
Got it. Well, when we post the video and everything, we're going to make sure we'll put links to HOTWORX.
Oh, that's wonderful.
To your real estate, everything, right? So maybe we can help you find some clients. Sounds like something that I would enjoy going and doing, So as you know, step into success. We like to always ask our guests, what is success to you? What is your definition of success, and how do you know if you're successful?
Sure. That's a big question, right? So, it's different for everybody, and it's something that I would say is also like a moving target. There's something that was like really impactful that I saw today. I was just sitting at like an open house and scrolling through something. It was this guy that was, he was like acting out this situation, right? And it was him and his like younger self. And he's like, hey, look, he's like, it's like, you did this. He's like, we got everything we want. He's like, this is awesome. And he's like, in that moment though, this guy was like stressed out about whatever deal he's working on right now. So I think there's no way for me to like pinpoint it on one thing or one material thing or one amount of money in the bank or something like that. Because no matter what you do, whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're 9 to 5, like there is risk in just waking up every day, right? Like that's just the way of the world. You get hit by a bus, tornado, whatever, right? Crazy shit happens. But what I would say is just having peace in your life is the biggest thing, right? So a big piece of like why I took an interest in the health and wellness thing is that like I knew I need to do better for myself, right? Like in having my kids, I was like, wow, like I can't be like sore all the time and feeling like crap and like not being able to get upstairs and everything. So it's like I have to like work on me first. So like having my health be intact, like I could be homeless and I could be happy at being healthy, right? Having my health is probably the number one thing, and that is a never-ending piece of the success journey because it doesn't get any easier as you get older.
Right.
When it comes from like a monetary standpoint, that's more of, whatever that amount is, and it's different for everybody, but being able to have that peace at night where you're not worried about every next thing, right? Now, as a business owner, like you're going to take risks, like you can't be totally risk averse, right? So there's going to be sleepless nights. There's going to be other things that come up that, just everything's never going to be like unicorns and rainbows. But having some of that peace in your life where you're like, what, if I have a down month, like I'm not worried about somebody coming and taking the house.
Right.
So I'd say, from a standpoint of success, right? Like having your own like well-being, that feeling of peace where you just, things are okay no matter what. So I'd say that would be, kind of my definition of that, and being able to like move through life, happy, spending time with my family, spending time with the people that I love. That to me is true success. You want to throw in some of the fun stuff too, like a nice new house, some sports cars, stuff like that. Like I love that. I love that stuff. But it is not the end all be all by any means. So.
Where can our audience learn more about you, your businesses, and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm on all like the major social media outlets. So like your Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. Don't spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. I probably should spend more time there. But on top of that, there's my website. It's just momentumrealtypartners.com. So that's where people can find links to all those other things as well. But that's where the vast majority of like my everyday business stuff, you'll see that stuff on the website and on the social media outlets. So,
Patrick, again, we know you got a lot going on, got your hands full. So we appreciate you taking time out to come be on Step Into Success podcast and hopefully provide I know I got some great value out of it. Hopefully the audience did as well. I'm sure they did. And we just want to thank you for your time.
Yeah, well, thank you guys for hosting this. It's always exciting to see people, getting out there and telling the stories of different entrepreneurs in the area, different people in the area. So I really appreciate you guys doing this and wish you nothing but success with it. It's exciting to be a part of it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you found today's episode to be insightful, please make sure you give us a like if you're listening on YouTube, or rate us if you're listening on Spotify, Apple, or any of the other podcast platforms.
And to help us keep sharing these successful stories, please subscribe to the channel.